One of the main things that the right likes to cloak themselves in is this idea of we are now the defenders of freedom of speech and a free press, and the left has abandoned those principles, and now they're more authoritarian. And you see this with, pink-haired kids on college campuses trying to shut down speakers they disagree with. And if you believe in freedom, you come with us. This is the line that you get from the right. Well, Candace Owens, honestly, she didn't even realize she was doing it here, but because of a petty personal beef that she had, she came out and made a detailed and explicit argument as to why she thinks freedom of the press is bad and wrong, and she's opposed to it. I'm not kidding. Take a look.
So Cardi B just was losing a debate and then just randomly tweeted out a doctored tweet of mine, pretending it was a tweet that I had sent out, and doubling and tripling down and pretending that I had really, that my husband had an affair with my brother. I don't even know if the tweet was actually so ridiculous that it wasn't, but it got me so angry because it was just so petty and it was so small. And, it was just a demonstration of how ignorant she is, how unable she is to have a true debate about anything. And obviously this went viral, and, my lawyer sent out a letter to her lawyers and basically said, we're going to sue you, and we're going to sue you in Georgia. And she basically said that she doesn't live in Atlanta full time and that we would have to sue her in New Jersey. It was this whole long back forth. And at the end of the day, my lawyers, I'm still talking to them, but they basically said, as two public figures, you could sue her and you will get a lot of headlines about it. But because of New York Times versus Sullivan, there's just so much protection for people to be able to lie, just to lie and pretend that it's the truth, and there's no consequence. And it's one of the things that I have been the most passionate about, New York Times versus Sullivan needing to be reversed, not because of a petty spat between Cardi B and Candace Owens, but because it's the reason that our country is so divided, because there are people that are quite literally subscribing to fake news all day, every day, believing that Donald Trump peed on hookers in Russia because they're watching what they deem to be legitimate news sources tell them that, because Rachel Maddow is telling them that. And then after 2 years of taking them down this rabbit hole, she goes, oh, never mind, none of it was real. It's problematic. And if journalists could be sued, if individuals could be sued for, lying and smearing about public figures, then this wouldn't happen. They would just have to tell the truth. And I always say the United Kingdom is such a standard for that. Obviously, my husband is English, and every single time any publication in the UK writes anything false about me, I send out one letter and they instantly have to issue a retraction, because they have true defamation laws, and me being a public figure does not give them a permission to lie about me. I don't understand why America is the only country that has that standard, that allows the press and allows public figures to be lied upon by any individual in the world. So, we have that. We have 1 year to decide whether or not we're going to sue her. We have the lawyers in New Jersey that are kind of that we've signed with. It'll be a decision that I'm going to make probably in the new year.
That's incredible. It's like a historical truism that a lot of these right-wingers who act like they're the biggest free speech warriors, they inevitably end up suing people over speech. Seen it a number of times, or threats of lawsuits. Donald Trump threatened to sue Bill Maher because Bill Maher made a joke comparing Trump to an orangutan. Sent a letter and everything. All right, so let me break this down for you so you explain just how insanely wrong she is and how she's taking the anti-free speech, anti-free press, authoritarian position on this. I totally disagree with her, completely. And I'm saying this as somebody who has been lied about relentlessly online. Any public figure, particularly in the political realm, has been lied about. Of course. Okay. So, New York Times versus Sullivan. It was a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that basically solidified freedom of speech and a free press. And so the idea is this. When it comes to defamation, there's a much higher standard for public figures. Specifically, it held that if a plaintiff in a defamation lawsuit is a public official or person running for public office, not only must they prove the normal elements of defamation, so publication of a false defamatory statement to a third party, but they also must prove that the statement was made with, quote, actual malice, meaning the defendant either knew the statement was false or recklessly disregarded whether or not it was true. So, in other words, if somebody goes out there and lies about me, or calls me all sorts of names, or said I did something that I didn't do, or whatever, I would need to prove not only that they did that, but that they actually thought it was true and they were maliciously doing it on purpose. So, but the problem with that is, of course, probably most of the time somebody comes after you, they actually really dislike you and they believe whatever the thing is that they're saying, or they're just trolling you and they're being sarcastic. They know it's not true, but they're just trying to get a rise out of you. So even if somebody says something that's provably, demonstrably, verifiably untrue, if they say, well, look, I heard it from this group of people over here, and there's the documentation that they said it first, and then I was just repeating the claim, that's enough to get them off. Because they thought, it was real, and I don't like the guy, and so I'm repeating it. If they genuinely think it's real, or if they're just trolling and they're being sarcastic, they're off the hook. And it should be that way. It absolutely. You want to clog up the courts with petty grievances like this? Again, if anybody has a reason to want to agree with the more authoritarian position here, it would be me. It would be any public figure, particularly in the political realm, because we get lied about all the time. All of us do. But look, grow a thicker skin. Like, that's what you got to do. Now, listen, I thought I had a thick skin. It turns out I don't. So what's my solution been? I just don't read the insane, over-the-top criticism. I don't read it because I know that'll take up my mental space and I'll think about it too much, and I know it's untrue to begin with, so why would I even bother with that? But Candace Owens and a lot of these right-wingers are the ultimate snowflakes. Anybody says anything about them and they're like, they lose it. I'm going to sue you over this. Why? So, but wait, the specifics of New York Times versus Sullivan are even more interesting. So before this decision, there were about $300 million in libel lawsuits from the southern states against news organizations who were in the north. And so what they would try to do is they would try to prevent any critical coverage of segregation and the officially racist laws that they had on the books back during those days. They would try to stop any news organizations from criticizing them by throwing a bunch of libel lawsuits and defamation lawsuits at those organizations. And so it was an attempt to stifle freedom of the press and basically say to them, hey, you better stop criticizing us. You better stop critiquing us. You better stop looking at us skeptically. You better stop printing these things that we don't like because we're going to ruin you financially if you keep doing it. And so the decision from the Supreme Court with this actual malice standards, it reduced the financial exposure from defamation claims and protected the media to do their job. And eventually that strategy from southern states to just sue anybody who said negative things about them, they were really no longer able to do it. The whole idea of it was let's try to suppress criticism. That was the whole point. And so does the UK system get it right? No, of course not. Look, I'll go a step further. Again, I'm taking the position that is the true left position and is the anti-authoritarian position here. But even hate speech, that's a category in a lot of European countries. It's not in the United States of America. The number of restrictions on freedom of speech in the US are absolute minimal. I mean, you have as few restrictions on freedom of speech as possible in the United States of America, and that's correct. It should be that way. And by the way, she should be thanking her lucky stars that it's this way, because conservatives say things all the time against lefties that are over the top and absurd and are lies and borderline defamatory. Remember when Trump ran in 2016 and he said Ted Cruz's dad was involved with killing JFK? So be careful what you wish for, because if they actually had the standard that they say they want, they would get the pantsuit off of them over and over and over again. Now, again, I don't want that because I'm principled and I'm consistent, and I think it's the best case scenario for everybody. It's the least bad scenario for everybody if it's live and let live, say whatever you want. Yes, there are instances where things go too far, but it should be, the standard should be incredibly high to prove libel, slander, defamation. You know, when it comes to the online rules, that we talk about this all the time. Targeted harassment is something you can get axed for, or doxing is something you can get axed for. Direct threats of violence you can get axed for. But outside of that, it should be people say whatever the hell they want. And look, I think either Cardi B was trolling with the things she said, which is allowed, or she saw the tweet from somebody else and thought it was real and then passed it on. It's one of those two things. So you're not going to be able to take her down. And by the way, what an absurd... The idea was, it was a tweet from Candace Owens that was fake, where it said her husband was cheating on her with her brother, and she asked to join them in like a threesome, and they said no. The overwhelming majority of people are going to look at that and giggle, because they know it's not true. Look, is it something Cardi B should have put out there? No, of course not. Of course not. Is it something we should have a freaking lawsuit over? No. No. The Supreme Court was 100% right with this. What she wants, what Candace Owens wants, is a precedent that would have made it so southern states could have continued to sue northern media outlets and basically stifle any criticism of them. It would be terrible if we lived in a society where people get sued all the time for even giving an opinion about somebody that's harshly critical or even unfair. I mean, that would be terrible. Everybody would have to walk on eggshells 24/7 and never really speak their mind. And that's horrendous. That's horrendous. And, you know, media outlets, Jesus Christ. Again, conservatives should be thanking their lucky stars that the situation is like this, because the number of times they say things that are provably, verifiably, demonstrably untrue or borderline defamatory or wrong, it's astronomical. So, careful what you wish for, Candace. But yeah, look, she did this video. It was all about like the 2021 year in review, and the whole thing was like, me, let's talk more about me. Nobody cares. Come on, nobody cares. You want to talk about issues? That's what's supposed to be what you do. Political commentator, right? But it was all, you know, about her. And this shows you, look, this shows you. It is all, none of it's abstract. None of it's theoretical. None of it's philosophical to Candace Owens or a lot of these right-wing commentators. It all comes down to what's convenient for me at this exact moment. So if she was getting sued for saying something fucked up about somebody else, all of a sudden she would flip and be like, free speech, free speech, free speech. But when Cardi B says something about her, it's, I'm against free speech. We need to reverse New York Times versus Sullivan and crack down on freedom of the press. Okay, but just own it. This is an authoritarian position. You're citing a place with way more restrictive speech laws as an ideal. So there's nothing different from Candace Owens and left authoritarians that she claims she's against all the time. You are taking that exact position. You're taking an authoritarian position from the right in her case, but there are plenty of left authoritarians that want to police speech. You agree with policing speech. So don't tell me ever again that you're in favor of free speech or a free press. You are clearly not. And you're literally citing the Supreme Court case that helped solidify freedom of the press to say, I'm against that one. It's insane hypocrisy, and it's insane she doesn't realize what she's doing here. But honestly, I think she's not bright enough to even realize what she's doing here. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.